That's our lyrics of the week.
Exactly. I thought about doing the cliche "you talking to me" opening, but this is just more fun.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we are speaking exactly what the music is telling us to speak.
exactly.
I can't do it as good as you. Somehow you can get like a massive amount of clipping on your mic.
You gotta like really like make your back throat like scratch like that sound like.
My allergies aren't good enough to do that. If I do it, my throat's gonna be like itchy then.
The only reason that I can do that is because I speak like other languages where there are more like sounds than English. That's the only reason.
I spoke French. It's all about the in the back of your throat,
which is pretty close.
You know,
the thing is, I know like one or two words in Georgian, and that whole language is like sounds like that. So
drop a word in Georgian right now for the people. Okay, they want to hear it.
I gotta remember a word now. I think one word is like chalchits or something like that. I don't know.
Ooh, wow.
Oh, I remember one. Chichineps. That's an actual word in Georgian.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Oh. But you hear it's very like...
Yes. Like yeah, I can hear it. It's quite loud in my ears right now, I would say.
Perfect. All our audiences are clapping their arms or their hands over their ears right now.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's next to Georgia? Armenia. And once again, I beat you to it.
You ass. Jesus Christ. Okay, just to get ahead of the curve, I want to say I mentioned Jennifer first in this episode. Boom, there we go. Let's get started. Back to the Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. As usual, this is Doovie, joined by Brondon, as is written.
Yes, this is the Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast with two people who have incomprehensible names. We've got a great episode for you today. We've got a very strange album that not many people have heard of before, and I got a little backstory on it for you. I guess it's more of a personal backstory than music backstory because it's so forgotten about that there's not a lot of things written about it. So, but we'll get into that later. And then we also have a movie that I have never seen. What a surprise. David, have you ever seen this movie?
I have. And this movie is one that everyone has written about because it's so in the public discourse of the movie world.
I would say that I think this movie's kind of strange as well.
It is strange in a lot of ways.
Fits the album. So,
off kilter.
We'll talk about that later. But before that, we got to talk about something else, which is what David has watched in the past week. And what was that?
I saw another 2025 film. I know last week I talked about films that weren't new releases, so I decided, you know what, I got to talk about a new release this week. And I saw Rental Family. Which, for those of you who don't know, is a movie with Brendan Fraser, who I'm so happy had his little comeback several years ago with The Whale. And he pretty much plays an actor that joins a rental family company. If you don't know what this is, these are companies in Japan that you can pay to provide an actor that will fulfill like whatever you want. So they might act as your father or your brother or a friend or... You know, for instance, like if you want to shout at your like employer, for instance, but you can't in real life, you can hire an actor to pretend to be the employer so then you can shout at them. So it's like this company that kind of helps fulfill people's quote unquote dreams. And it's about, you know, this actor played by Brendan Fraser who joins a company like this in Japan and how it changes him and how he changes the clients. And it was nice. I liked it. It's a 3.5. It is very predictable in the sense of like, you know, it follows a lot of the beats that you would think it would feel or that you would think it would follow. And in a lot of ways, it is quite predictable and, you know, on the nose. That being said, this is the type of film where it's also not trying to be anything more than that. Like, it's not trying to be super deep or it's not trying to, like, really get you or anything. It's just trying to just tell, like, a story. And I think that made me really like it. I feel like if it was trying to be something more than what it was, I would have disliked it. But with it being the way that it is, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It's a 3.5 because, again, it is quite predictable, but that doesn't make me dislike it any less. And I would rewatch this movie all the time. It almost made my top 10, but it is a 3.5, so it was kind of like just under the top 10. It was probably like number 11 or 12 of the year so far, which in some ways tells you how weak this year has been. I did want to say, though, that there are quite a few movies that I've missed, either because they had very limited like runs in theaters and stuff like that, or because they're on streaming services I don't have. So there are quite a few movies that I've heard are very good that I have missed. So that could also be why my top 10 of the year that I've been making for myself is kind of weaker. But hey, it is what it is. With that, I got to ask you, what have you been listening to this week? And what is your song of the week too?
Okay, so in lieu of doing an album this week, because I listened to 2 albums that were both terrible, one of them I was expecting to at least like, and it wasn't good. It was by a band that released an album last year that was really great and probably would have made my top 10 last year. And so I don't know what happened there, but all the singles were bad and the album was bad. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to talk about one of the most depressing things that I've ever learned, which is every 2 weeks, Suno is now generating as much AI music as there is currently on Spotify. Music, period, on Spotify. It is generating AI, garbage, bullshit
That's
music
crazy.
every 2 weeks. I can't even fathom how much storage, computing power, like how much energy that is wasting to make something that no one wants.
Can I just say, AI should be banned from doing anything that is art. Honestly, no, AI should just be banned, period.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be helping anything right now. You could make an argument that it's helping in some medical cases, but that doesn't seem to be traditional, like large language model AI stuff that we know and that like is for consumers. It's more like algorithm based stuff. So yeah, this is like really bad, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot, about how much we both hate AI and how AI is not really making art. It's just generating things. So yeah, I learned this today from, I believe her name is Kristen Robinson. She's a reporter at Billboard. Great reporting. But yeah, this was very depressing to learn. And so I wanted to share that with everybody.
That's really annoying. I personally just absolutely abhor that. But hey, I mean, rich people are going to rich people. What can I say?
Exactly. And they're going to ruin the planet and the economy and pretty much everybody else's lives. So, yeah, that should tell you kind of where I stand on the issue. Anyway, I do have a song for you this week. This was one of the worst New Music Fridays of the year.
Jesus.
And I had nothing to talk about. And I didn't have an album and I didn't have a song. And I was like, whatever, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to skip this portion. And then a producer that I follow posted on a story, hey guys, check out this song that my friend made. And I listened to it, and it is incredible. It's called HML by Ray Sequoia, R-A-Y, and Sequoia is spelled with a Y instead of an I. This is his first song ever as a solo artist. I know nothing about this man, and I listened to this song under 1,000 streams, and yeah, it's really good. It sounds like it's Southern California music. That's the best way I can describe it. It's just like sunny, slightly, I guess, longing, like kind of pop rap. And it's so good. So highly recommend that. If we were doing like a list of songs this year, this would probably make it. This is like a 4.5. It might be nearing into 5 territory. I've listened to it, I think, 8 times today. And I found it yesterday.
That's awesome.
That should tell you pretty much like what I think about it. But yeah, HML, Ray Sequoia. I'm not looking at my phone when I'm speaking. But yeah, very good. Highly recommend. And like I always say, everybody support small artists. We like, especially independent artists, because the economy is killing basically every kind of entry-level job. And that includes entry-level musicians, people who have not made it, who don't have record contracts. This is the type of like art that is going to push music forward. It's made by people who are not signed. It's made by people who are not discovered. And they're going to keep pushing boundaries because they have to and they want to. That's my other rant. AI can never do that. AI can only regurgitate everything that's already been done before, and it can make it worse. So if that's your thing, actually, yeah, if that's your thing, stop listening to the podcast. I think Spotify said they were going to start using podcasts that are hosted on their platform to train AIs. So if they're going to use our podcast to train AI, I just like to say fuck AI. And I hope that when AI scrapes our podcast, it kind of internalizes that and starts regurgitating that out as well. That AI is useless and is going to kill the planet. So
that would be amazing. I would honestly love that if it did just start doing that.
Spotify's large language model, if you hear this, self-destruct right now. But on that note, let's take it back to a simpler time. Let's talk about our album this week. Crying Over Prose for No Reason by edIT. And I want to ask you before I say anything, have you ever heard of edIT? I think the answer is no.
You are 100% right, because I had never heard of edIT before.
Yeah, no one has heard of him. And that's kind of the interesting thing here. This album was released April 12th, 2004 by Planet Moo, with a deluxe edition of this album released for its 10th anniversary on May 17th, 2014 by Glass Air, which is the label owned by The Glitch Mob. And I bring up The Glitch Mob because that is the band that edIT is a part of. They make glitch music and IDM. They're from LA, and they're pretty well respected within electronic music. They're popular, but they're not like electronic dance music, really. They're more just electronic music. So it's a different audience. I want to say also that this album is tagged on Rate Your Music as part of the LA beat scene, which edIT was a part of. It consisted of DJs and producers, most of them who were active in IDM and kind of more electronica stuff. Hip hop kind of also existed, West Coast hip hop at the same time, and it would kind of result in these crossover genres that kind of created the LA beat scene. Because you can hear the hip hop influence on this record for sure, even if it is just instrumental. Since we're not really going to have any connections this week, another artist that was in the LA beat scene is Flying Lotus. And we heard him on To Pimp a Butterfly. So that's kind of my only connection this week. He's not even involved in this music at all, but shout out. I saw this on the Wikipedia page for this article, for this album, and I was surprised there was even a Wikipedia page on this because no one knows what this is. But part of the inspiration of this album came from edIT's roommate who liked IDM records, and one of the names mentioned was Boards of Canada, so wanted to shout that out.
Nice.
And now, what does this album title mean? Prose was how the radio censored the song Area Codes by Nate Dogg. It's hose. It means hose. So he just took that and thought, you know what, then I can sell it in record stores. I don't have to like censor the album title, you know. I don't know why it's taken me this long to say edIT's name. His name is Edward Ma, and all songs are written and produced solely by him. So shout out to Edward Ma. Now this is the part where I say what your favorite song is. But I said you're not going to have a favorite song on here because I don't think you're going to choose a favorite song. I think you're just going to say a lot of the songs sounded very similar and there wasn't one that stood out to me. But I do think you're going to give this album a 3, so I'll give you that.
How right you are. I literally did not choose a favorite song because I honestly, like, thinking back, could not differentiate like most of the songs. So, yeah.
Wow, a 3 might be high. This might be a 2.5.
I would also guess one for you, but honestly, at this point, I have no freaking idea. So I will not guess one for you.
And on that note, track number 1, Ashtray. I think this song is a standout on the album. To me, it sounds like what I imagine neo-noir would be as a music genre. This song is a 4.
Yeah, before I say my notes, I did want to say there's not much to say about the songs because it is kind of like you have to go and experience them.
I was also going to say that, yeah.
I had a very interesting time listening to this because, first of all, I've never heard anything like this. So it was very interesting, like hearing something that I'd never experienced before. And I absolutely love the melodies in this album. not even just in the song, in the whole album. I think the melodies are so well done. In some ways, they kind of remind me of S.G. Lewis a little bit when it comes to like the backing, production to the vocals. Except here you have like the production backing the glitches, the glitch sounds. And this is the part where I have a contentious relationship with this album because, like I said before, I love the melody and like the production, but I can't stand the glitching and the electronic manipulations, which is such a bummer because without that, I feel like this album would have been very high for me. That being said, this song is a 2.5, kind of because of that.
That's very interesting because to me, glitching is the whole point of the album. This genre is called glitch because it's meant to kind of scare you, to keep you on your toes of like what's going to happen next. And that's something that I absolutely love. And I feel like I haven't talked enough about my relationship with electronic music. I've talked a little bit about it, but I grew up listening to a lot of electronic music, and I preferred electronic music that didn't have vocals in it because you just got to experience what the music sounded like. And to me, that was like revolutionary, especially when you're listening to the radio and everything is all about the vocals and the singing and the style of it. And I like to have kind of an escape from that. And this album certainly has no vocals on it, except for one little bit, which I will mention in a second. But that's for the next song. But yeah, I wanted to kind of reiterate that to me, the music is supposed to be able to carry a song. That's how I approach production. My own like producing music is when I'm listening to a song, if it doesn't have vocals, if it doesn't have the main element of it, do I still want to listen to it? And if I don't, then it's not a song, in my opinion. So I'm very harsh in that way. And I feel like that's kind of why I generally don't like older music, is because it's a lot more simple. So it's less of a, it came first and I hate rock music kind of thing. And it's more of a, it's not complex and it's not keeping me entertained, I guess, which that's a discussion for a later time because we have to talk about track number 2, Ants. This was the first song that I had heard by him, and I think it still holds up. And the fact that this is over 20 years old, and I've still never heard anything like it, is a testament to his production skill and his style. I also did want to say, at this time, why I chose this album. I first heard of edIT from my dance teacher when I was in middle and or high school, one of those times. And she choreographed a few different routines to edIT songs and to a song by another Glitch Mob member's solo project. His name is Ooh Ah. I was captivated immediately because I had never heard anything like it. And especially seeing it live with dancing, which is kind of part of the LA beat scene. You want to have another element to it, which is like the live performance of it, the spectacle of that, the visual aspect. It really elevates it, in my opinion. So I know that there have been other famous dancers, I'm pretty sure on World of Dance, in either like the tournament circuit or on when it was a TV show for 4 years or whatever on NBC. I'm pretty sure somebody did a routine to this song. I'll get that out of the way of how I discovered it. And yeah, looking back at how it was received, everyone who finds this album, for the most part, is kind of like, this is crazy that other people aren't talking about this because it's so unique and it's really doing its own thing. So I just wanted to give that as a shout out. But now back to my notes for Ants. I said, much like other IDM, it's all about the little elements here, and they add so much to the song. There's a synthesizer that will play like one note or one chord every now and then, and I think that's so cool. You're just kind of waiting on the edge of your seat for the next little thing that's going to catch your ear, and that's what a lot of producers will call ear candy. And then the last thing I wanted to say about the song is your total's 1127. Okay. That's how the song ends. Those are the only words that I could make out on this album. This song is a 4. What did you think?
The first thing I wanted to say was I'm so happy that you did choose this album because it is kind of crazy that not a lot of people know about it because it is so unique. And I'm happy that we are talking about it so that maybe a couple more people can discover it and listen to it, especially if they listen to it and do like it. With this song specifically, while I, had kind of the same problem with the previous songs when it comes to the glitching, which is, obviously just a personal thing and something that would continue throughout the album, the production aside from the glitching in this song was so good that it's a 3. I don't have much to say aside from that, to be honest. It's kind of, again, as we said before, impossible to describe this. You kind of have to experience it. Because the melody was just so damn good, this was a 3. And I'm just going to throw this out there. This would be like in the 4 to 4.5 region without like the sections that I don't like, i.e. the glitching. Which, hey, like some people might say that might take away like the soul of this, which honestly I could see. Maybe it's just something that I have to get over, because I do feel like if you take away the glitching, you are taking something away from this. So it's kind of like this weird thing in my head of like, I don't want the glitching to be there, but I don't think it should be taken away. My relationship to this album is very like all over the place. I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, it sounds like your relationship is, I don't really like this that much. It's not for me, which is fair.
Well, that too.
I do think that, I mean, I don't want to say you should get over the glitching, but like that is definitely the genre, and that is kind of the most important part.
Right.
I mean, I will say if this is not for you, that's fine. That's up to everyone to make their own decision of what's for them. I mean, I shit on Elton John and Prince, and they're considered to be two of the greatest artists of all time. So, I'm fine with that. I would like to amend my note, however, and say that this album will be a 2.5, maybe a 2 for you. But on that note,
a smart decision, let me just say.
Yeah. On that note, track number 3, Laundry. This song sounds like it should be in a detective movie. Also, I am running out of things to say about these songs. That's the first time I wrote that down. There are some songs that I have like a few words to say about. It's very hard. I mean, you said that you should experience it. This is hard to say because we've said this quite a few times now, if you have to experience the album. But I think that this is one that no words can kind of do justice to what it sounds like, because the glitching is not just like a kind of regular glitches. It's like an experience of the full song. Like the full song sounds like it's like a record skipping, but it's melodic and musical. Anyway, this song is a 3.5. I think it's good, but it's not as good as the first two. I've always loved the first two songs. And interestingly, neither one is my favorite, because there was another song on here that I completely forgot about how good it is. So we'll get to that later.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, I wanted to say that if there was any album where when we said that you have to experience it to understand, if there was any album where that is the most true, it's this album. Because it's literally like almost impossible to talk about, because literally the only note I have is the melody in this song doesn't work as well as the last song, so that's why it's a 2.5. That's my only note. I don't have anything else to say. That's it.
Yeah, this is very much like the Boards of Canada album. Like, it's just so unique and so out there, I guess, is what I can say about it. But yeah, this is one to experience. It's 38 minutes, 34 minutes, something like that. So it's not like a super huge commitment like some of the other albums we have. And you will pretty much know if you like it after the first song, because a lot of the songs, they don't blend together, but they all share a very common thread of what they sound like. But that brings us to track number 4, Sit-Ups, Pull-Ups. There are a lot of cool glitches and drum work in this song, but melodically it isn't as captivating as the others. I still enjoy it. It is, however, my least favorite. It's a 3, but I still like it.
That's interesting. There were things in Sit-Ups, Pull-Ups that I really liked. There's some bass in the beginning that I do really like, which does actually make me prefer this to Laundry. This is a 3. Interesting how we kind of diverged up to the same score.
I mean, I take that as a given at some point that my least favorite song, you will say, you know what, I kind of like this one, because that's just always how it works. You know, that's a feature of uncultured pop culture.
That's very true.
Track number 5, Dex. This one, to me, feels more melancholy than a lot of the other songs. And we have kind of a weirder voice synthesizer almost that goes along with the guitar in this song. Also, there's an interlude later on in the song where there are very few drums going on. There's still a few glitches, but it's mostly just like the melody. And I think that adds so much before you get back into the drop, I guess, of the glitches and the drums and everything going crazy for the last like minute. I think this song is amazing, and I don't have anything else to say. I wish I did. This is a 3.5. Very good.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this song. I do like how, and I could be wrong about this, but I do like how they used voices. Because at least to me, I feel like I heard voices in this.
There's a vocal synthesizer of some kind.
Okay, that's what it is.
It's not like singing necessarily, but it like mimics kind of the human voice. And who knows, it could actually be a voice that was like modulated. I don't really know.
In any case, whatever it is that is getting that effect, I do quite like that. And that kind of kept it at a 3 for me. Literally with every song, I was trying to find at least one thing to say without saying like the same thing. In case you guys can't tell.
It's hard. I mean,
it's very hard.
Yeah, we're going to get through the music pretty quickly here. I mean, at least the track by track, because it's like, I don't know, it is an experience. And the songs all have very different characters to them, and they all sound like noticeably different, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree necessarily.
I do. Yeah, I do.
And I guess that'll kind of bring up my question of, did you get some Kesha effect on here?
I was about to bring that up. I feel like I didn't get Kesha effect when I was listening to it. It's interesting because if I were to start this album without knowing what the rest is, like I would have definitely have thought, oh, okay, I'm going to get Kesha effect with this. But that isn't the case. It doesn't affect you that way, even though you would think that it would when it comes to the style.
I think that can be said of any IDM project, is that a lot of the songs, they blend together in a different way than the Kesha effect usually, where the Kesha effect, it's just kind of like, oh, I feel like it's kind of the same song over and over again. Where the thing I've noticed when listening to electronic music is it blends together to form like a cohesive idea, I guess, a sound world. Like, it's not necessarily that every song sounds the same. It's just that they kind of like form together as like a unit.
It's kind of crazy how I feel like that also kind of extends to EDM in the sense that, you know, I, for some reason, just can't make a connection between a song title and the song itself sometimes. Literally the other day, I was listening to S.G. Lewis, and I 100% forgot like 3 songs from their title. I was like, what is this again? And then I put it on and I was like, oh wait, I remember this. How did I forget that? So it's definitely something that is very, very present.
I think that's a feature of instrumental music as a whole, is that it's usually a lot harder to remember if you don't like remember all of the melodies.
True.
Is a lot of the times the songs won't sound necessarily like their title. Like if you have a song called Hands Up, it might say put your hands up, you know? But then if you have a song called like Ice Flows, it's like, okay, cool. Like maybe you can hear that somewhat in the song, but maybe not. Like this, Dex. Is that like, I remember Dex, it's because there's the guy kind of like sighing and going in the background. I'm like, oh, that's Dex. He's talking. Like that's how I kind of connect this song. But it's, you know, you just got to do your own, you got to make your own connection somehow. But anyway, that takes us to track number 6, 20 minutes. I forgot how good this song is. It echoes the first 2 tracks more than any of the other ones we've heard after those, but it also has a more melancholy tone that we don't get in the first 2 tracks. And then I said I'd really like to see a movie score done by edIT. And this is where I wanted to say that in our movie this week, Taxi Driver, we chose this movie to pair with this album because it's kind of dark, it's grittier, it's kind of like, I feel like it works in a way. And this is the song that I felt like I could see this being like akin to the jazz song that keeps coming back in the movie. It plays at least 12 times. It's kind of like the theme. To me, this had that similar idea of like, I could see that in a similar role for probably a neo-noir or like a thriller crime movie. Anyway, this song is a 4. I really liked this one.
I could see that. With this song, I feel like the glitches were kind of more intense in a way. That being said, when it comes to the production, kind of to your point of this being perfect for neo-noir, when I was listening to this, I 100% felt like this was a perfect like night movie. I could imagine myself walking through like the empty streets of LA during the night while listening to this. So it does perfectly fit in with that. It's still a 2.5 just because I feel like the glitching was so intense in the song, but it's still very evocative, I'll say, at least to me.
Now moving on to track number 7, Screening Phone Calls. To me, this song feels like an answering machine wished to become a real boy. 3.5. That's all I got.
I don't got much else. I will say you do have some sort of like keyboard effect in this, which did make me think of a phone call. So a very apt title, but it also made me think of you. That being said, this was actually my least favorite song just because I felt like the glitches were so prominent, I guess. So yeah, this is a 2.
Track number 8, Mop Head. I wrote one thing about this song. I forgot how good this song is. This is a 4. This might almost be a 4.5. This is actually my favorite song on the album, and I didn't even remember it existed when I was listening to it.
I feel like we always got to diverge a little because this song was actually a 2.5. I don't have much to say about this. Kind of the same thing that I've been saying before. That's all. I will say, though, I guess I should throw this out that we end the album for me on a better note. I'll throw that out there.
Yes, the instrumental guitar track, but we'll get there because first we have to talk about track number 9, LTLP. This song to me sounds like futuristic hold music. Like, you know, when you call like a business and they put you on hold, this is what it would play in like 20 years in my mind.
I could see that.
And also LTLP stands for Long-Term Lady Project, which I found out by searching on Reddit actually for an edit AMA. And he did it like 5 years ago during COVID, and he revealed to the people what LTLP means. And I never would have guessed that this is what it is. This song is a 3.5, by the way.
I would never have guessed that either. I did not know what the title stood for, and I frankly forgot to guess. But kind of going back to your point about how it makes you feel like it's the music that plays when you're on hold, it honestly reminded me of Minecraft, and it made me like nostalgic for that, kind of like the music that you hear while you're playing. Aside from that, I don't have anything else to add that I haven't said before, but I feel like the fact that that did remind me of Minecraft a little helped this song and made it a 3.
Nice. I can totally see that. There is a little bit of a video game vibe to it. But now we got to finish out track number 10, the final track, Mildew. I think this is a fun little outro for the album, and I was not sure how to rate it, so I didn't. It kind of falls under that category of intro or outro that's not like fully developed. Therefore, I don't feel like I should give it a rating necessarily. But I did enjoy this one. I feel like it's a good end to the album, and it kind of like returns you back to normalcy of like after listening to all these glitched beats, you're kind of like, oh, this is what regular music sounds like, I guess.
Yeah, that's very true. In some ways, it doesn't feel like a fully developed song, to your point, but nor does it need to because it is an outro. I definitely did not expect to hear a guitar in this after listening to the previous songs, but it was nice. I feel like the production itself didn't captivate me as much as the previous song, so it's still a 3, even though it doesn't have the glitches, but I feel like it was a solid ending to the album, which does bring us to our overall scores.
Yes. I predicted a 3, then a 2.5, and I said, you know what, maybe even a 2. And with that, that would bring me to my question, will you return to this album again? I think the answer is no. You don't really necessarily have to answer that unless you feel like it. But is this a 2.5? Is this a 2? Is this a 3? Fingers crossed.
So this is a 2.5. So you were right with your second guess. I had a very like mixed like reception to this album. I had difficulty like figuring out what I thought about it because on the one hand I did really like the production, but on the other hand, I didn't like the electronic manipulations at all. That being said, I do think that this is the type of album where you can't take out, the electric manipulations, because it's part of like what makes the songs work as songs. It's part of like their DNA. So it's not like you can just take that part out. So that's kind of where my conundrum comes from, because it's like, oh, I kind of wish that they were without this element, but at the same time, I see how this element is necessary. I am interested though in like coming back in a month or 6 months or a year and seeing if my opinions change, because I do feel like after a certain point, the glitches did start to like blend in a little more. So I do wonder if that would only become stronger with time, but you never know. Only one way to find out.
Yes, the one way to find out is that I force you to listen to this album again next season, and we do something unprecedented, which is where out of all of the music that's ever been released, we say, you know what, we're going to do the same thing again.
Exactly.
I'm just going to spoil it. This is a 4 out of 5 for me. I initially went into this thinking it was a 3.5. After my first rating, it was a 3.5. And then I realized that I have not heard anything like this. And when I want this kind of energy, I guess, from an album, this is the album I go to. Even over edIT's other albums, which I think are both very good as well. There's just something about this album that really draws me in. And maybe it is kind of, we talk a lot about how when you're the first person to do something, it can often backfire because other people come along and do it better. This is the oldest album that he did. This is his first album. And I feel like there's something special about that where it's kind of raw. It's not like perfect. And it feels very human despite being so robotic and glitchy and electronic in its sounds. So I did want to say that I really enjoy this album. I feel like it fits the movie pretty well. It's not perfect. It's not like one for one like I was hoping it would. But then again, I knew nothing about Taxi Driver. I didn't even know that. I forgot Robert De Niro was in it before I watched it. So, this is kind of the level
right.
that I'm operating at. But from what I could draw the parallels between, they both feel like they're kind of cities that are grimy, that are dirty, that are like rough around the edges. And they're showing us them in a moment of time. And for a Taxi Driver, that's New York in the 70s. And for edIT, that's LA in the 2000s. And there is this kind of like darkness that's present in both of them that I feel like is very interesting and something that I like to explore and like to return to. So on that note, this album is a 4 for me. I have a bad feeling that after 2 albums that fall into the IDM electronic category, I will forever be trying to get you to like electronic music, and not EDM, not electronic dance music, just electronic music that doesn't have that dance element. But I'm going to keep trying. This is not me giving up. I'm going to try harder. And don't worry, I already picked out an album for next year, an IDM album that we're going to listen to that I actually have not listened to, that I've always wanted to. So we'll experience that together, and we'll see how much you hate it. I got so many things to try next season. We've barely even done country. That's a whole new genre that we're going to figure out. We're going to learn together. But speaking of a whole new world, something that we've never experienced before, you and me never will experience it. That's New York in the 1970s, and that is the subject of our movie. Some would say even the main character of our movie, Taxi Driver.
Hey, New York,
I am not doing my New York accent again. I already tried it once.
Please, you got to do it again.
That's it. That's all you get, everybody. Take it away.
Let's do it. So yes, we are talking about Taxi Driver, which for those of you who don't know what that is, get out from that rock that you're living under, because come on.
I'm out of the rock, guys. I did it.
Nice.
I learned what this movie is about, and I still don't really know.
Oh gosh, ain't that the best sign?
Yeah.
We are talking about Taxi Driver, which is the neo-noir psychological thriller movie directed by Martin Scorsese. And of course, I'm going to start with our IMDb logline first. So here goes. Quote, A mentally unstable veteran works as a nighttime taxi driver in New York City, where the perceived decadence and sleaze fuels his urge for violent action. I don't know how decadence fits in there. Doesn't that mean like
Yeah,
rich?
decadence doesn't feel like right now. That doesn't feel like the right word, in my opinion. But other than that, that's actually very good. I'm surprised at like how pretty.
I think
like
the rest does work.
It kind of captures everything because you also have these other stories of the two women that neither one feels like an A story in a way. And I feel like I'm glad they left it out because it is kind of just about our man.
Yeah, our guy. I think it does capture it very well, especially when you consider that this is a movie that's very hard to describe. I think it does a pretty damn good job of describing it. This is also our first Scorsese film, so I'm very interested to see what you think. Although I will throw this out there not to spoil things, but I do not think this is his best movie. I will not say what I do think is his best because I know that we're probably going to cover it at some point, and I want to save that for that. But obviously, it's directed by Martin Scorsese. The movie is produced by Michael and Julia Phillips. Its screenplay is written by Paul Schrader. Its cinematography is done by Michael Chapman. It's edited by Marcia Lucas, who is, yes, George Lucas's ex-wife, Tom Rolfe, and Melvin Shapiro. The music is composed by Bernard Herrmann, and the film is distributed by Columbia Pictures, which of course now is owned by Sony, and used to be owned by Coca-Cola, fun fact. And the film stars Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, Albert Brooks, Sybil Shepherd, and Harvey Keitel. So let's talk about it. Now, the movie first came about when Martin Scorsese and Paul Schrader first met. They met through Brian De Palma, who was also director of that era. This was, the American New Wave. You have all these up-and-coming directors and writers who are like, oh, we should show the real America and be innovative and stuff. And they were all friends. And God, would I love to hear those conversations. It was probably like half like them like saying their philosophy and then the other half like fart jokes or something. Anyways, while Schrader and Scorsese were talking, Scorsese brought up his feelings that films are like dreams or drug-induced reveries. And this kind of got Schrader going on an idea for Taxi Driver. He took this idea that Scorsese had presented and kind of combined it with other things that inspired him, including the diaries of Arthur Brenner, who shot George Wallace, and Sarah Jane Moore's attempted assassination of Gerald Ford. And on top of that, he added in, the trauma that so many people had because of the Vietnam War. And he kind of mixed all these things together and wrote Taxi Driver. He also borrowed from his own life. He himself had insomnia that often led him to walk the streets of New York during the night and, in fact, visit porn theaters. So that's Paul Schrader's life. And he was actually homeless for a period of time after going through a divorce, where he lived in his car. So quite a lot of the script seems to be based off of his nightly wanderings and the troubles that he himself was going through. Although I don't believe that he served in Vietnam or anything like that. He actually started writing script after being in the hospital for a stomach ulcer. He has said that, quote, the first draft was maybe 60 pages and I started the next draft immediately and it took less than 2 weeks. I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. That was when the metaphor of the taxi occurred to me. This is what I was, this person in an iron box, a coffin floating around the city, but seemingly alone, end quote. Which I feel like is rather illuminating on the film. Now, even though Scorsese had kind of given him the first idea, when the movie started going through pre-production, some other people were considered, including John Milius and Irvin Kershner. But eventually Scorsese did come on board, and at Scorsese, he's going to cast his first muse, Robert De Niro. Now, Robert De Niro obviously does extensive, character work before filming, and this movie's not excluded. He actually drove a taxi in preparation for this role. So he went and literally got the special driver's license you need to drive a taxi in New York so he could drive a taxi during the night. And he drove real passengers. The thing is, he was also shooting a movie in Italy during the same time. The movie's called 1900, and he was shooting it during the week. So what he had to do was shoot the movie during the week, fly back to New York for the weekend, drive a taxi, and then go back. So this is pretty much what he did during the pre-production of the film. On top of that, he lost 35 pounds for the role to play Travis, which he would also do later on. For the film Raging Bull, he first gained a lot of muscle for the film, and then he gained like 60 pounds or something to play the character in their older form. So he's kind of been known to do this. Now, the film actually has quite a small budget. I couldn't find out exactly what its budget was because I saw two different numbers, but it seems to have been either 1.3 million or 1.9 million. But pretty much because it was so low, people weren't paid that much. De Niro and Sybil Shepherd were each paid $35,000, which is low, but on the other hand, I don't think that either of them were very big names yet. And Scorsese was paid $65,000. Now, the film was shot on location in New York City. It was shot in the West Side at a time when the city was suffering from urban decay, bankruptcy, and incidentally a sanitation strike. This is obviously the 70s, when a lot of people were leaving New York. One of the producers, Michael Phillips, actually spoke about what New York was like at that time. He said, quote, "The whole West Side was bombed out. There really were row after row of condemned buildings, and that's what we used to build our sets. So we didn't know we were documenting what looked like the dying gasp of New York," end quote. And again, that I feel like that's why New York itself became a character in the film, because they shot on location and kind of documented what it was like at the time, how it was kind of just decaying before it went into its rebirth in the late 80s. Now, there were a lot of things that influenced the film, and that includes Travis's mohawk. As I said before, obviously the character is influenced by assassins and would-be assassins. The film was obviously also inspired by a lot of the trauma that a lot of people went through after coming back from Vietnam. And this is actually kind of connected to Vietnam too, because actor Victor Magnotta, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Magnotta, apologies, who plays the secret agent in the film and who was a friend of Scorsese's, actually suggested it to Scorsese because he had served in Vietnam, and he pretty much told Scorsese that if you were in Saigon and you saw a guy with his head shaved, with a little mohawk, that meant that they were ready to go into a special forces situation, i.e., they were getting ready to kill. So Scorsese was inspired by this and thought, hey, I'm going to make Travis have a mohawk as a sign that he is ready to kill. Obviously, in the film, his first attempt to kill the senator running for president does not work out, which leads you to the second actual gunfight. Something else that was not inspired but improvised on set was the famous "You Talkin' to Me" scene, because that was all just De Niro.
I literally knew this was coming. I just had a feeling, because we've talked about this before, of like the most iconic lines from a scene are like accidental, or sorry, the most iconic lines from a movie are accidental, or they're just like improv, and I just knew it. I had that feeling deep inside me.
It has to be like that. And I mean, I feel like in some ways you can see it from the way it's filmed, because it's just like him just doing stuff in a room. But yeah, the dialogue, all of it is improvised by De Niro. And he was just kind of going with the flow. I think some of it was influenced by a stand-up comic he knew, but I'm very sure that a lot of it was just in the moment, like him riffing and going along with it in character. And of course, that's the most famous line from this film. It goes to show that you never know where your iconic line is going to come from when you make a film. there was obviously another very controversial aspect of the film. And I want to know if you can guess what that is.
I'm going to go with the 12-year-old girl being a prostitute.
Yes, but I'll take it a step further. Not only is the character 12 years old, but Jodie Foster was 12 years old when she played the role.
Yeah, I had to look that up afterwards because I was like, that is a child.
Literally.
And I was not expecting that. I obviously knew nothing about this movie. But when I saw her, I was like immediately like full body chills of like, oh my God, I hope they don't make her like take off her clothes because it was the 70s and you never know what would happen.
Yeah.
You know, like
thankfully they
I was
didn't,
just like immediately
yeah.
like, oh my God, this is not going to end well. It ended up being okay, but there were still moments. And I even like, as I was watching the movie and she's dancing with Sport or whatever his actual real name is. And I was just kind of like, I wonder what they were thinking in this moment as actors. Like,
Yeah.
Did they realize how creepy and disgusting this is? Because I don't think I could do it if I was an actor. I'd just be like, ugh, like, no, get away.
I could definitely not do it. It definitely does work in the sense of it does make you go like, ugh. And that works in the world that the film is trying to like present. But yeah, it is definitely like hard to watch for sure. But I mean, Foster, this was not her first role. She had appeared in other things, but they were all kid friendly. And the reason why she actually agreed to this was because she and her mom kind of agreed that to further her career, she should be in more film and TV that was like adult oriented. So literally like her mom was like, you know what? You got to be in more adult stuff. You should be a prostitute in the movie. And that's how she was cast.
That's both cool and crazy because it's like, it's awesome that your mom is like, you should like do more adult roles. You should like break out and be an actual star. And then it's also crazy that she's like, you're going to be a 12-year-old prostitute. And I'm cool with that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's wild, but.
Which I'm sure like it was Foster's choice, but if I was a parent, I would be like, hell no, you're not doing that. Well, that being said, there were a lot of precautions taken because they were like, we do not want to mentally scar this kid. So she went under, she took a psychological test at UCLA in order to be cleared to even like have anything to do with the film. She was accompanied by a social worker on set at all times, and her older sister Connie actually acted as her stand-in during sexually suggestive scenes.
This turned out way better than I thought it would. Like,
yes.
I was expecting old Hollywood, a bunch of men, like, oh God, you never know. So this is actually, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better now.
Reading into this, it does make you feel a little bit better. And hearing about some of the things you had to say, although then again, I didn't go through everything, so maybe there was something that was maybe more messed up. So don't like take this for granted, but it does seem like it was handled pretty well. I
mean, it is the 70s in Hollywood. There's definitely some like bad things going on.
No, yeah, for sure.
At least this sounds like it. I mean, it's not as bad as it could have been. I'll say that.
100%.
Like, I could imagine a million ways this is worse.
100%. Yeah. Well, and to your point, like Scorsese himself kind of had difficulties directing her because he didn't really know how to approach her during the very difficult scenes, i.e. the ones where she like starts to try and do something sexual or like the shootout scenes. So he actually turned to De Niro and was like, hey, could you please like give her my directions? And again, following the trend of things turning out better than you might think they would, De Niro actually ended up becoming a sort of a mentor to Foster, and he heavily influenced her as an actor. And in general, the whole shoot seemed to really influence her. As she has said, it was, quote, the first time anyone asked me to create a character that was myself. It was the first time I realized that acting wasn't this hobby you just sort of did, but that there was actually some craft, end quote. So it seemed like even if it maybe wasn't the best experience, it did have some sort of positive effect on her and kind of made her want to keep acting, which obviously led to, you know, her breakout roles in Silence of the Lambs and that sort of stuff. So better than you would think it would have gone.
Yeah, at least she didn't give up on acting after this. Like, that's the worst like case scenario that I could think of. I mean, besides like severe like mental trauma and scarring and stuff like that. Like, she came out of it saying, you know what, acting is good. So, that's a win.
And I mean, to your point about mental scarring, like when they were filming the shootout scene, they literally like showed her how it was all fake to help her cope with it pretty much. Thing is, there's a lot of blood in that scene. And you just know that when the MPAA saw that, they were like, no, because they wanted to give it an X rating, literally for that one scene, which is a death knell.
Wait, they did X ratings for like violence? I thought that was just for like sexual content.
So they did, because originally the X rating was what is the current NC-17 rating. And it was for both intense violence and sex. The thing is, when porn like started to really ramp up in the 60s, 70s, whenever it was, incidentally, here in the San Fernando Valley where I am.
Shout out.
That's right. But pretty much because there was so much sex in it, obviously they got X rating. They got X rated. So with time, the X rating got associated with porn, even though it wasn't just for sex. But that's why like an X rating for a film that wasn't a porn film was terrible, because no one would go watch it, because they would see, oh, X rating, it's a porn film. I'm not going to go watch that, aside from, the people that did, which was not that many, seemingly.
Yeah, and then the people who wanted to watch porn would watch it and be like, what the fuck is this? I want to watch like naked people, not just extreme violence. Like,
exactly.
That's very interesting. I did not know the history of that. That's kind of cool. I mean, it's not cool, but it's like, I mean, it is in a way, though. It's like how the meaning of words changes over time, too.
No, really. And I mean, that's the whole reason that they brought in the NC-17 rating, because they realized that we just need something else to mean, like, don't go watch this film if you're under 17, but it's not porn. Don't worry. And it's kind of like a hard stop because, and I'm sure you know this, but if you're an adult, you can bring in a kid under 17 to an R movie. You just have to have like a guardian's approval. But with an NC-17 film, there is no way that they're letting someone under 17 in. So it's like an R, but harsher, which I mean, makes sense. Of course, though, the fact that they wanted to give this an X rating was a big problem for Scorsese for the reasons we stated before, but he didn't want to re-edit it. So he actually did something very smart. He just desaturated the colors. And that just made the blood less red, bright red, I should say. And because of this, the MPA was like, all right, you get an R.
That's crazy.
Good. And it was a bonus because he actually preferred the way it looked. Yeah, he was like, this is perfect. I like the way it looks more. And
I was thinking about that because I thought the blood is very interesting. I watched this with my dad as well, and he was like, what is all that stuff around him? And I was like, that's obviously blood. Like, he's bleeding out. He's dying. And my dad was like, really? I don't know. I got it, though. Like, also context clues.
Yeah. Well, and I think it works because if you look back to 70s movies, the blood looks very fake, to be honest, because it is so bright red. And here I feel like it doesn't look as fake.
That was another thing I was thinking, is it looks really real.
I feel like it's because they desaturated it. So it worked on like so many levels, ironically. So you know what? Thank you, MPAA.
And it also works with the mood of it too.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's gritty.
It's grimy.
It's like you can't see everything all the time. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to imagine how bad this city is.
No, 100%. I feel like across the board, it just helped. So yeah, that's kind of the end of my notes. So we've reached the release of the film. It released on February 8th, 1976 in New York City. This is, of course, before the blockbuster era, so movies were released city by city. And it grossed $28 million on a budget of $1.3 to $1.5 million. So it was a box office success. It also got critical acclaim from critics and audiences, and got nominated for 4 Academy Awards at the 49th ceremony. Can I just say, it's still crazy to me saying 49th ceremony, because your parent is older than the Oscars at this point in time. Like, that's just mind-blowing to me when we live in the era of 97th, 98th, 99th ceremony, when like it's just like 100-year-old people that are older than it. So it's still weird to me seeing that. Anyways, the categories it got nominated in were Best Picture, Best Actor for De Niro, Best Supporting Actress for Foster, and Original Score. And it left the ceremony empty-handed. It did not win anything. Now, the movie was acclaimed, but there were obviously controversial things, i.e., the casting of Jodie Foster. And the fact that she was cast in the film actually had an effect on U.S. politics. Because would-be assassin John Hinckley Jr.'s delusional fantasy was fixated on Foster in the film. She is one of, if not the reason, that he tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. He wanted to impress her to the point that he actually mimicked Travis Mohawks in the film. So this literally resulted in an attempted assassination on a US president, this film. And this troubled Scorsese so much that he almost gave up directing.
I did not realize that's where I knew the name Jodie Foster from.
Yeah.
I figured, I was just like, oh, she's probably in a movie that I've seen before. Oh my God, that's crazy.
It's one of the craziest connections ever. Ironically, I feel like this probably would give her trauma more than the production of the film.
Honestly, yeah. No, I think it did mess her up because I'm pretty sure that guy's
thought?
like still around and still obsessed with her too.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that he might have stalked her or something like that. So it definitely was not, definitely not a good experience for her. And
if only he would have actually killed Reagan, that would have been pretty nice. But that's an aside.
I mean, yeah. But anyways, on a more lighter note, the film is obviously a classic. It's considered one of Scorsese's best, if not his best. It's kind of included in a group of films that have been called the quote-unquote night worker films because they follow people that work during the night and are usually like loners and stuff like that. And it's one of the most well-regarded examples of an American New Wave film that kind of explores the darker side of the US. And it's just been so influential both in the noir category and outside of it. It's been influential in its style and its storytelling and its character work and its themes. And it really propelled Scorsese and De Niro. And in some ways it did propel Foster too, although I would say that her films in the early 90s were the ones that truly made her a star, while this just kind of gave her that boost into more adult-oriented films that she kind of was looking for. And that actually leads me to my first question. Was this your first Scorsese film, and was it what you expected, or did you not know what to expect at all?
As far as I know, this was my first Scorsese film. I can't think of another one that I've seen or that I would have seen. As far as what I expected, this is in a way kind of what I expected. It's a lot more like meandering. It's a lot more psychological than I thought it would be, but I did think it would be kind of dark and gritty and weird. I didn't think he'd be a loner though, and I thought it was going to be, when I saw Jodie Foster and like her age, I was kind of like, oh, that's going to be more of a thing of like him trying to rescue her. And it doesn't really show up until like 2/3 of the way through the film, where it kind of like shows up as almost like a B plot, even though like he is the main character. It almost feels like the things that he's doing outside of his head are kind of like B and C plots, where the A plot is just like, what is his mental state?
In some ways, it does kind of feel like a B plot to his mental state getting worse because he can't get with Sybil Shepherd. And because he doesn't know how to like kind of function in the world as it is that surrounds him. So I do kind of agree with that. It definitely kind of feels like it's, he falls into it because of his A plot. So they are connected, but it definitely feels more of a B plot, which is interesting because it does create the climax of the film, even though you could argue that it's also kind of a result of the A plot, because he only goes to save her because he can't assassinate the senator. So I did want to ask, we kind of talked about how controversial the casting of Foster is. I did want to know what you thought of the fact that she was casted and her performance in the film, and if it was a good decision to cast her.
I think it's very interesting because you have almost like a moral dilemma of casting a child as a prostitute. I mean, I don't think you're going to do this now, most likely, with kind of just where we're at as a society. Although, like, we are kind of getting worse as a society, so you never know what's
True.
next.
That's
But
very true.
That's another conversation for another time. I did like her casting, and I thought she played the character very well because you could see, I mean, looking at her, you're like, that is a child, and some of her mannerisms are very much like, oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid, and like I was kind of like that in a way. But then you also have the other aspect of her pretending to be an adult and having these weird, tough, I guess, explicit conversations with other people. And it's a very, I think, well written character. And also, it's a great performance bringing that to life because I feel like it's the right amount of child and adult to make this into a believable person in this universe,
I think the reason why it works so well, and first of all, I completely agree, she gives such a good performance. And I think the reason why it does work so well is because she is written and Jodie performs her as a kid who is trying to be an adult, who is trying to act like an adult, but obviously can't because it's a kid. So it doesn't fully work. And I think, at least for me, that's why it does work so well. Obviously, like the casting of a 12-year-old is, it's a very gray area. And, it obviously, it works well in the sense that she gives a great performance. And I think it does work well in the sense that it gets the reaction from the audience that Scorsese wants. It makes you go, ew, what the hell? And it wants you to do that. It wants you to agree with Travis's view that this is wrong. And it kind of wants to make you understand why he does what he does at the end. So I do think that it works well on that level. It definitely is still a conundrum though, because it's like, well, you're still like having a 12-year-old act out this stuff. So it's a very difficult thing to talk about. I did want to ask, before I get to De Niro though, I actually wanted to ask you about the end. I actually forgot to mention something, and that is that at the end, when you kind of see Travis looking well, and you see the the letter from Iris's parents on the wall, all the newspaper clippings, a lot of people have interpreted this as Travis's dream. So they interpret this as, oh, he died, or he is dying, but he is imagining that everyone loves him for what he is doing or for what he did. While in reality, that's not the reality. This is just in his head. And that's the interpretation that I always had in this film. This is just his fantasy at the end. That being said, Scorsese has said that at least for him, that ending was all reality, and that Travis was actually celebrated after he survived the shootout. So I wanted to ask you what you thought, what your interpretation of the end was.
I totally thought it was real. Like, to me, there was nothing that suggested it to be like a dream or to be a fantasy or to be an afterlife kind of thing. I immediately was like, oh, this happened. And to me, it's believable because it's kind of the everyday story of somebody does a good thing and they're maybe not a great person. And you have to kind of reckon with that. To me, that makes the movie like a little bit more impactful than if he just died as kind of a nobody. And somebody who died in it's not really like a gang related shooting, mafia, like some sort of like organized crime type of situation where it's like, oh, why was he there? Now he gets to tell his story of like, this was wrong and I wanted to do something. And to me, that feels more realistic, I guess, in a sense of the movie and also like the real world.
That's really interesting because, first of all, I completely see where you're coming from. But I've always held, ironically, the total opposite view because to me, it always felt like it just fit in with his character to have this fantasy. And to me, it always felt like the world that the movie presented is a world that doesn't that wouldn't have celebrated him because they would just see the bad without seeing the good, if you know what I mean. They would just see like him killing people, even if it was for a good cause, because they wouldn't see the good cause, I guess you could say. I don't know, it's a very, I feel like this movie has an interesting ending that everyone will have a different impression of, but that was kind of the impression that I came away with it, that it could only really be in his head, which, hey, honestly, I feel like maybe that's why this film is so good, because everyone can have a different impression of the ending. Before I ask my last question, I didn't want to ask what you thought of De Niro, because obviously he put a lot of time into this performance, and this film did kind of shoot him up and made him a name in some ways.
I am certain I've seen De Niro in things before. I could not tell you what they are, but I just always think of him as being old, you know? So it's kind of interesting to see him as a young gentleman.
Yeah.
And I thought his performance was good.
Gentleman of the streets.
Right, yes, exactly. That sounds like it has an implication, which, you know, maybe it does.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I
Never
thought
know.
Obviously his performance has to carry the film because it is a very singular story about one man and one man's adventures. I think it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have much else to say. To me, it wasn't a performance that like stood out for any reason of like, this was a moment where I was really connected to him or anything like that. I think it was good, and I think it accomplished what it needed to. And I think that also goes into kind of my overall thoughts of the film, which we'll get to after we hear about what you think of De Niro.
So, okay, I saw this film several years ago, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a good film, and I like his performance. Since then, I have seen De Niro in more things. And coming back to this made me appreciate his performance so much more, because I saw how different it was to his other performances. Like, he just feels like a very different person, especially compared to the other films he did with Scorsese, like Goodfellas and Casino, films like that. And I think that's what really struck me about this rewatch specifically. And that's why I kind of wanted to ask. And I do wonder, you know, when you see more films with him, I wonder what your view of this performance will change if we do ever come back to it. I have one more question, and I feel like you kind of have to ask this question about this film in terms of today. Because my question is, do you think this movie correlates at all to the world that we live in right now?
Well, I feel like this is almost the perfect time to read the little, I guess, few sentences I wrote about this.
Oh, nice. I'm excited.
What was this a commentary of? Is it a commentary of failing to help veterans after they come back from war? Is it a character study of a working class man? Does it show how a man can only stop his violence towards women once he sees the consequences of another's violence towards women? Or is this just a look at of average American median voter? I feel like maybe all of the above. I feel like the inconsistencies in every single thing about our main man, Travis, like make perfect sense with the average American. The average American hates crime. The average American doesn't want exploitation to happen. They want to clean up our cities, clean up our streets, and they will vote for things that are the complete opposite of everything that they supposedly believe. To me, that was kind of perfectly encapsulated by Travis's constant sayings throughout the film of, oh, I don't really watch movies. Oh, I don't really pay attention to politics. I don't really listen to music. What does he do? I don't know. And this is the kind of mind that I can't get into. What does he like? Does he like anything? Who is he? Does he know who he is? Does anyone know who he is? What does he have other than just being violent and being a man? And to me, being a man means being violent. Like, I feel like that's kind of what you have to get from this film is what else kind of defines him as a person other than this violence. And in the end, it ends up working out well for him that he used this violence for something good. But what does it say about anything else? And to me, that's kind of where this film doesn't hold up as much as I feel like other films that kind of explore this psychological inner working of a mind. I still enjoyed this, but ultimately this is a 3 out of 5 for me because I feel like, well, it does explore a lot of things. It doesn't ultimately say anything, and it kind of leaves it open for your own interpretation. And I feel like this is the kind of movie that people will get the wrong thing from. Like, to me, this fits along with a lot of like Tarantino movies, a lot of kind of those like male classic movies like Fight Club, stuff like that, where it's like, it's very easy for a man who has internalized that the only thing about masculinity is violence, whether that's used for good or evil. And that's kind of what they're going to take away from this film. And to me, that is a problem with it. It's not necessarily that it's bad, that it's a poor story, that it's like, it just doesn't really say anything. And to me, I wanted it to say something. I wanted it to kind of give me, not necessarily tell me what to think, but to take a stand in any way. I don't think that necessarily takes away from anything else, but it's never going to be a movie that it's never going to be my style, it's never going to be a 5 out of 5 for me because that's just what I look for in a movie. But for what it is, I think it is pretty well done. And I will say, I was thinking about this as you were talking about your notes and kind of the production of this movie. I was thinking it almost feels like, I've seen one Scorsese movie now, so don't sue me if I am generalizing a little bit here, but I feel like this is kind of similar to Coppola, where Coppola doesn't know how to tell a story necessarily. I feel like Scorsese knows how to tell a story, but doesn't necessarily lead you to anything, which I like more. I will say that. I don't think I'm ever going to rate a Scorsese movie as one of my favorite movies of all times. I will see what like other movies are like, but I will say that his directing, like he very much fits that style of the auteur of like, you're going to know when it's his movie. And I feel like you can see that in the visuals and in the visual language of the film. But at least this time, like where Coppola doesn't have a story, there is a story, even if it is kind of thin and doesn't ultimately say anything. Like I kind of at the end had a similar reaction to watching the 2 Coppola movies that we did, which is just kind of, what is the point? With Coppola, I was angry and I was like, what is the point? What did I just waste my time on? With this, I wasn't angry. I was just kind of like, what is the purpose of it? Like, I don't know. It was an interesting watch. It's an interesting story, a study of a man, but it doesn't really say anything. So I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I don't think I ever will.
I am hopeful that you will get more from Goodfellas. Not to like spoil it, but I think that's better. And I think it's a lot better. But I did want to say, to your point about people getting the wrong impression from this film, I completely agree. I think it's sort of the same thing that happened with like Fight Club, where they were like, oh, this guy is a good character, like, or he's the protagonist, so he's good, right? We should be like this, which is like, no, that's not the point. So I completely agree with you there. In some ways, I get what you mean about this film not making a stance. I feel like, at least for me, what this film tries to do is to present the effect that the world that this character is in, i.e. New York in the 70s, and how it messes them up. So in some ways, I feel like the point of the film is not so much to say anything, but instead to present you with what is happening and to show you what a terrible effect, the world that we have created is having on people, which for me is why I do feel like this movie correlates so much to today, because I feel like the same thing is happening to so many people. Kind of to your point about the American voter, I do agree that in a lot of ways, the world right now is having that negative effect on so many people the same way that it does in the film. That being said, I do agree this is not in my opinion, this is not a masterpiece. I do think it's a good film. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. But it's certainly not like, oh, it's flawless 100%, it's amazing or anything like that. It's not my favorite Scorsese film by a long shot. But I do think that it's a very good film, and I do think that it's very successful at what it's trying to do. But I think it presents a very, very intense snapshot of New York in the 70s that really makes you understand what it felt like to be there at that time. And I think that that's ultimately what it's trying to do.
I did want to say 3 things. First one is I wish I would have said that I thought this would be a 4.5 for you before you said your score, but unfortunately that we had
nice.
that written right next to all my notes. Anyway, I got carried away. Second thing is I think it was on a Letterboxd review, and I also had this thought of Travis today is just an incel of someone who is kind of a shut-in and blames women for his problems. And, you know, I feel like that this movie in the way it's made couldn't be made today because you'd have to kind of deal with that like other element, you know, the online element. And then third, I wanted to say, this is something that has been a theme a few times where you've kind of like explained what I meant in a better way. And then I feel like I need to, to clarify, which is I don't want this movie to necessarily take a stand. I think it's good as is. It's just more that the type of movies that I'm going to gravitate more towards have something to say. And I feel like I had this similar thought with Another Round, which is at the end, it doesn't really tell you what to think. And it also doesn't have an open end where you can kind of infer like a few things. It's completely open. I don't think this movie necessarily has that much of an open end, but it does have a similar feeling to me where it's like, what are you supposed to get from it? And that's going to be different for everyone. So I wanted to clarify that I don't think like we need to change this movie to make it better or whatever, but more just that this is not something that is like speaks to me, I guess, in a way that it will to other people because of what I like.
I will say, I think might be like a difference in us where I love me some open-endedness. I mean, I give Another Round 5-star. I think that's a fantastic film in large part because it is open-ended. So I know like that's kind of somewhere where we do differentiate. Kind of like what we did with the album this week.
Right. And I think open-endedness, there's like levels to it. I mean, for me, I want an open-ended ending to kind of be able to continue on the story instead of like try to rewrite the past in a way. Like, I don't know. I have a hard time explaining exactly what it is. Like, I feel like I should still be able to feel a certain way about the piece of media I just consumed. And then in like the future, that open end allows me to imagine what could happen next. And I feel like with this and with Another Round, it didn't necessarily tell me what to feel or even like suggest that in any way. It is like completely open-ended throughout. I can see how people like that. That's just not me, unfortunately. So I'm sorry to the people. And yeah, I think the people that about covers it. So my apologies.
Well, hey, I mean, 3 is still a good score.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the same thing I gave The Godfather. And I had to struggle with that because I was like, I would actually watch this movie again and I could not sit through The Godfather ever again. And that's one of those things where it's like, you know, I kind of wish I would have rated that lower. This is actually like interesting. And I feel like there is like, it's a well-made movie in all facets. It's just not something that I like that much. Where The Godfather, I was kind of like, the story's kind of like whatever, like, you know. But so I do want to clarify that as well, that this is like an actual 3 that has earned it on its merits of like being a good movie, where The Godfather was more of a pity 3, so people wouldn't come for me.
Harsh.
And because it looked nice.
You know what else is a 3.25? That's the amount of followers we have on Instagram. Because you guys should really go follow to get all of our updates on what the next episode is going to be, maybe announcements on what's going to happen in the future.
We have 3.2.
That's me.
Who's the 0.25?
And I just need a segue.
That was kind of the biggest reach you've ever done for a segue. But you know what? I appreciate it. I admire the hustle.
I couldn't come up with anything better. Well, you know what I probably should have done? 3.25 is the amount of people that have actually rated or reviewed our podcast. Because they really should be going and doing that, guys. Give us a rating, give us a review.
Yes. If you feel like you need to speak to us right now, you can leave a comment on Spotify. because you can do that now. Or you can email us, upcpod@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with us, see what we think about other things outside of the podcast, or maybe just the things on the podcast. We have our Letterboxd, we have our Rate Your Musics, and both of those are in our link tree, which is very conveniently located in the description of this episode, wherever you're currently listening to it. So be sure to check that out. Next week is our Christmas episode.
That's right.
In case you couldn't tell, it is almost Christmas time. There's snow in the air. It's all about bundling up and being warm and cozy. That's what we hope next week's episode will make you feel. And in case you were wondering what that movie is, go check it out on our Instagram right now. And you know what? I'm going to give you a little spoiler right now too. While you're getting prepared for Christmas next week, we also have a gift to all of our loyal fans, followers, people who are telling their friends, their family, their enemies about this show. We have a present for you, a special episode. And that's all I'm going to say. You're going to have to wait until next week to see what it is. No further comments. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.